I have a theory about why the British dislike Americans as much as they do, and no, it isn't because of our obesity problem, our gun culture, or Trump, but instead a legacy of resentment. The United States is quite literally a byproduct of the most unruly and least desirable people who once lived in the British Isles, and these people ultimately went on to create the political and cultural framework of the United States. Historian David Hackett Fisher writes extensively about this in his book Albion Seed for British Folkways in America, where he describes the 4 distinct groups of people who emigrated from the British Isles to the New World. You have the Quakers, you have the Puritans, you have the Planters, also known as the Southern Aristocrats, and then you have the Borderers, the people who populated the backcountry. Now, while all of these groups may have been more or less, undesirable back in the British Isles, there was one in particular that was very undesirable, and that was the Borderers. The Borderers are commonly referred to as Scots-Irish in the United States, or Ulster Scots in the British Isles, may also be known as Border Reivers if you want to go far enough back in history. This would be the group of settlers who eventually went on to populate the south of the US, or the original 13 colonies from which it came, and the Appalachian backcountry. And while the Planters or Southern Aristocrats had already existed in the American South at this time, the Borderers were very different. So let's go over some of the backstory. The Borderers originally come from the war-torn region between England and Scotland during the Anglo-Scottish Wars. They were referred to as Border Reivers. They operated in clans and they raided livestock. They did not pledge their allegiance to either the Scottish crown or the English crown, and they were basically just seen as very lawless. They were regarded as savages. In fact, it's even believed that the modern concept of blackmail originates from the Border Reiver region. Anyway, fast forward to 1603 and you have the pacification of England and Scotland. The war has now come to an end and both countries have solidified a union. This guy, who was King James VI of Scotland, is now King James I of England. And he asks himself, what am I to do with these very unruly and lawless people who live in the border region between the 2 countries? Well, they were hung, their homes were destroyed, and many of them were deported to the Ulster province of Ireland, where they were still unruly and backwards. Fast forward again to the 18th century, and they began emigrating to the New World due to political instability, economic hardship, and discrimination. Now, if you would have guessed that they were still backwards in the New World, then you would have guessed correct, because the Northerners thought that they were savages, that they were lazy and prone to criminality. However, this group of settlers had a very profound impact on the culture of the United States. Many of our ideas around individualism, liberty, and freedom come from this group of Scots-Irish immigrants. In fact, Andrew Jackson was the child of Scots-Irish immigrants. While there were other settlers in the 13 colonies from which the United States was conceived who may have been impactful, the Borderers and the Puritans were definitely among the most impactful. So, do the British really just dislike us because we shoot guns and eat cheeseburgers, or does this have more to do with a legacy of resentment? Do they just not like us because we are a country founded by some of the most hated people who once lived in their country? And do they resent the fact that these people eventually went on to create the most powerful empire in all of human history? Anyway, that's all. Have a good day.